The dog trainer found himself both laughing and crying at the antics of the rogue dog before him. Every time he attempted to begin training, the dog would immediately walk away looking seemingly angry, and it would even wear a pitiful expression. Despite the trainer's considerable skills, when facing this dog, he found himself unable to apply them anywhere. The family members couldn't help but laugh heartily as they watched the trainer repeatedly fail with their own dog. It seemed they had forgotten the troubles the dog had brought to the family. Initially, the eldest son and second daughter in the family made a bet with their father in order to have a Samoyed. The condition set by the father was that if the second daughter could lose 10 kilograms in weight, he would agree to the children's request. To the father's surprise, the second daughter managed to shed 8 kilograms within 2 weeks. And so, Yuki the Samoyed entered this very fortunate household. From that day on, the eldest son took charge of Yuki's walks, while the second daughter managed the household and the dog's hygiene. As the siblings were the primary caregivers for the dog, they used their monthly allowance to purchase the medication the dog needed. Samoyeds are naturally lively dogs and easily won the affection of the entire family. However, as the dog grew older, the family gradually realized that Samoyed shed a lot of hair. According to the dog trainer Jiang's explanation, the shedding of a Samoyed equals the combined shedding of 3 other breeds. The dog's hygiene habits also became increasingly worse. It always defecates and urinates indiscriminately in every corner of the house. Although it sometimes uses a designated potty pad for defecation, most of the time it's halfway on the pad and halfway on the floor. Even the youngest daughter sneaks around when going to her bedroom because the dog tends to make a mess of the rooms. At first, the family thought Yuki was causing chaos at home due to teething. However, as it grew older, it not only didn't outgrow this problem, but its destructive behavior became even more astonishing. Wallpapers, floors, chairs fell victim to its sharp teeth, and even the family's clothing was not spared. More seriously, it also turned its aggression towards the family. From the eldest son to the third daughter, all were bitten. According to the family, Yuki mostly attacked when the family members were caught off guard. For example, when the dad was having coffee, Yuki would suddenly bite him on the buttocks from behind. Any attempt to stop it only made the dog more relentless. Regardless, no matter how much the dad tried to intervene, it was futile. In the end, he could only retreat to his room in resignation. But Yuki would quickly move on to the next target. Without hesitation, it would snatch food from the table, and shortly after, the youngest daughter had to leave for her extracurricular classes. At this moment, Yuki appeared behind her unnoticed, charging like a raging bull. It snatched the down jacket from the little daughter's hand. Any attempt to retrieve it would provoke Yuki's displeasure. Even the eldest son's attempt to lure it with snacks was ineffective. The little daughter was extremely angry at Yuki's behavior. Not only did it ruin her clothes, but it also beat her arms and thighs. Now, the little daughter has no affection for Yuki. Mom has always been fond of Yuki, but since the biting incidents, she deliberately keeps her distance from Yuki. That taught the family some methods to block Yuki, but the little daughter is young and lacks strength. Even if she blocks, she can't stop Yuki's pounds. Moreover, the family is no longer keen on taking Yuki out for walks because they fear it might attack pedestrians. Due to Yuki's long periods of not going out, it often stares blankly outside. The family can only reduce the frequency of walks. Once outside, Yuki becomes difficult to control. The second daughter feels exhausted. After just a few minutes of walking with it, it behaves recklessly, without any manners. In order to prevent their dog from harming others, the siblings learned some dog training techniques online. For example, when encountering pedestrians, they stand aside to block Yuki's view and then shorten the leash. After a few hiccups, they finally reach their destination. However, the sudden appearance of a child makes the second daughter extremely nervous. Fortunately, Yuki means no harm. In an instant, it behaves like a cat, diving into a pile of leaves. Yuki's disobedience during walks and lack of control puts a lot of pressure on the family. In order to turn Yuki into a well-behaved companion, the siblings decide to seek help from a dog trainer. The trainer mentions that Samoyeds are known for being very mischievous and strong. As for the biting issue that arises in the seeker's home, it's actually Yuki joking with the owners, expressing a desire to play. After all, Samoyeds are known for their playful nature. Here in the studio, we are still analyzing the situation. While chaos has erupted at the seeker's home, program staff not only face constant harassment, but also considerable damage to filming equipment. Even the guests are left scratching their heads in disbelief. This dog gives off a distinctly thuggish vibe. After the dog trainer briefs the 2 guests on the tests to be conducted, they quickly arrive at the seeker's doorstep. Hearing the knock, Yuki and the owners are already at the entrance. When the door opens to reveal strangers, the dog immediately employs its customary welcome, but this lunging behavior carries risks. Only adults can withstand such a forceful lunge from a dog of this size. If the target were an elderly person or a child, there's a high chance they'd be knocked over. Then, the guests ask the mother to bring her daughter's down jacket. Upon seeing the garment, the dog immediately jumps up before the girl even puts it on. The mother notes that whenever anyone in the house puts on clothes, the dog behaves this way. However, it's the daughter who gets bitten the most. To address this issue, the male guest prepares to implement the freeze-thaw training. Typically, the dog would charge at a running child and bite their feet or hands. Through this training, the dog can develop self-control and refrain from biting people. First, the dog is made to smell treats in the hand and then intentionally moved away. If the dog follows, it's commanded to stop, and if it sits down at this point, it's rewarded with a treat. This process is repeated in different locations. Then, the daughter attempts the training, which isn't particularly challenging, especially with the guidance of the male guest. The final results of the training are undoubtedly successful. The trainer wants to observe how the dog behaves outside, but Yuki strongly dislikes wearing a harness. Seeing the dog's resistance, the eldest son immediately picks it up, while the second daughter quickly tries to put on the harness. However, the dog struggles even more at this point. The trainer continuously warns everyone to be careful. The mother mentions that the dog always behaves like this when putting on the harness, and it always takes for people to successfully do so. After a series of twists and turns, including putting the harness on backward, they finally make it outside. Just as the female guest grabs the leash, the dog charges ahead. Facing the same problem, she shows the complete lack of cooperation from Yuki in walking on a leash. Although the eldest son at home is slightly stronger, the leash still needs to be tightly wrapped around the hand during walks. As the dog tongue still burst out, once the general direction of the dog's issues is clarified, the two guests exit. The in-home dog trainer receives an equally enthusiastic welcome from the dog upon arrival. He immediately removes the harness, and with a bit less restraint, the dog seems to regain much of its vitality. It follows the trainer like a shadow, sniffing around. The trainer explains that when dogs display overly intense affection towards their owners, family members must avoid overreacting. The bigger the reaction from the owner, the more interesting the dog finds it. The correct response is to express dislike directly, such as by firmly pushing the dog away. The trainer's blocking leaves Yuki somewhat timid, but it can resist the trainer's persuasive words. Then, the trainer pushes the approaching dog away again. Not expecting this push to deeply hurt the dog's feelings, sulking, it returns to the room. In the living room, the trainer continues educating the family. He explains that typically, when a dog is rejected for the first time, they may react despondently like Yuki, as it's a necessary part of their growth. Then, the trainer asks the owners to call the dog out. If the dog refuses, the owners can use the leash more assertively. As expected, the dog, looking very aggrieved, remains unmoved. To ease its mood, the trainer starts speaking gently to Yuki, but it still wears a forlorn expression, like someone unjustly accused and scolded. Now, Yuki embodies that sense of grievance. After speaking, the trainer starts forcefully pulling on the leash. The dog's unhappiness is evident on its face. Finally, it followed the dog trainer out. To prevent it from escaping back into the room, the trainer closes the door, but as soon as the leash is removed, Yuki runs under the table. Everyone tries to coax the dog out, but it remains indifferent. Facing the situation, even the trainer is at a loss. He decides to proceed with outdoor walking training first, but before heading out, the dog trainer noticed that the harness was too small. Such a tight fit would surely make Yuki uncomfortable, and a discomforted dog is naturally more resistant. Then, the mother brought a brand new harness, but even during the family's attempt to put it on, there were mistakes. Their actions made the trainer feel like they were catching a pig. Wearing a leash should be a normal occurrence, but the family's approach made the dog nervous. The leash shouldn't be rushed onto the dog. It's better to pat the dog first and then calmly put it on. For this type of harness, it doesn't need to be tightly fastened. The most suitable size is one that an adult's wrist can fit into comfortably. Next, the eldest son, responsible for walking, gave it a try. The dog seemed a bit panicked, facing the imposing figure of the owner approaching. The trainer kindly reminded the eldest son to approach the dog gently. First, show the collar to the dog to alleviate its tension. After gently hanging it around the neck a few times, the dog won't dislike it as much. Accompanied by the trainer, the eldest son and the second daughter went outside. Under the eldest son's guidance, the dog remained relatively well behaved, but when the second daughter took over, it became unruly. The dog trainer emphasized that if the dog rushes out, the owner must exert immediate force to pull it back. The trainer's control prevented the dog from running freely, so it resorted to barking and complaining. Clearly, the dog had grown accustomed to being pulled around during walks. If it doesn't walk at its own pace, it throws a tantrum. As a Samoyed, its instinct to run kicks in as soon as it steps outside, but living in a city requires owners to restrain its behavior. In narrow or crowded areas, the dog must walk in sync with its owner and refrain from sniffing or relieving itself wherever it pleases. Owners must take responsibility for their dogs and ensure they don't cause trouble for others. Surprisingly, during the explanation, Yuki even displayed threatening behavior towards passersby. Most importantly, the leash should be kept as short as possible. After a while, the group arrived at the park behind the neighborhood. The trainer quickly let the dog up the steps. However, halfway through, the dog trainer suddenly stopped. His approach was to provide the dog with some freedom while still maintaining control. In less crowded areas, owners can enjoy running with their dogs. The second daughter humbly sought advice from the dog trainer. If Yuki always rushes forward when encountering other dogs and behaves unfriendly, what should they do? This is an old problem, one that the dog trainer frequently addresses. Before allowing the dogs to greet each other, both owners should engage in natural and friendly conversation. Dogs learn a lot from such interactions. For example, if a mom has a close friend, their children come play happily together. Conversely, if there's tension between the moms, their children might be at odds too. The same applies to dogs. At that moment, a passing dog immediately caught Yuki's attention, causing it to act uncontrollably. After briefly gaining control, the dog trainer asked if the other party had time to cooperate with some training. Unexpectedly, the passing mother and daughter were devoted fans of Jiang's training. Following instructions, the daughter led the wild assistant dog behind a tree. The trainer praised her for the dog's good manners and explained that her own dog, just 8 months old, lacked self-control. Then, they engaged in a friendly conversation, discussing the dog's names, favorite toys. After the chat, the trainer asked her to go to what she thought was a safe spot, but as soon as she approached Yuki, it lost its self-control. The trainer explained that Yuki's behavior could make the other dog feel pressured and threatened. Fortunately, the other dog managed to withstand the pressure and ignored it. In such situations, it's important to apologize to the other owner and express gratitude. The trainer suggested that owners visit a dog park weekly and walk their dogs at least 3 times a day to expend their energy and reduce destructive behavior. As they were preparing to leave, they noticed some dog feces that hadn't been cleaned up. The dog trainer said that dog owner should treat the feces of other dogs as if their own dog had defecated. If every dog owner does this, it will improve the quality and awareness of dog owners. Back home, the trainer addressed the issue of the dog defecating randomly. If the dog doesn't defecate outside, it means it's not familiar with the surroundings. The trainer's earlier suggestion of walking at least 3 times a day is to create an environment for the dog to defecate outside. Only when it's familiar with the surroundings will it feel less nervous and naturally choose to defecate outside. The most appropriate number of walks is actually 4 times a day. Since the eldest son at home is strong and the main caregiver, he can't sleep in anymore. He needs to take the dog for a walk at 7 a.m. every 4 hours thereafter. Another walk is necessary. In the final training session, the dog trainer invited the assistance of the guests. The dog has shown significant improvement compared to before. Previously, it would jump aggressively towards visitors, but now it holds its head up, wags its tail, and gazes at the guests. This is the correct way for a dog to welcome guests. As for the issue of the dog biting people, it's actually not biting but a form of play. The puppy enjoys playing jokes with the owners. However, the daughter is young and lacks strength. While the dog is quite powerful, it's dangerous for it to jump on the daughter. So, the trainer suggests that the daughter shouldn't be left alone with the dog. The parents, including the older siblings, must remain vigilant at all times. If the dog behaves excessively towards the sister, they must intervene decisively. The mother asked what to do if the dog attacks the father. Actually, this problem isn't as difficult to solve as the family imagines. First, they should place a mat on the ground and put treats on it. If the father sits here regularly, the dog will likely sit nearby. If the dog jumps up, it needs to be pushed down, indicating refusal and telling it not to do so. However, this push made the dog disheartened, and it slipped under the table without looking back, looking pitiful as if greatly wronged. The trainer had to let the father try the training. However, no matter how everyone called the dog's name, it remained unaffected, showing obvious dislike towards someone. The dog trainer immediately walked over to the corner. Sure enough, as soon as the dog trainer disappeared from view, the dog immediately came out. First, the father needs to offer the dog to treats, holding the third one between his fingertips to let the dog smell it. Then, the father smiles at the dog, waiting for it to lie down. The dog will wonder why the owner isn't giving it the treat. During this process, the owner must not speak. If the dog doesn't understand, the father can lower his hand slightly to give a hint. The dog will realize that it's uncomfortable to eat in that position and will naturally lie down. Once it lies down, the owner immediately throws the treat outside the mat. Through this, the dog learns the rule of receiving treats. The trainer assures the family that with practice, tomorrow, the dog won't exhibit rude begging behavior when anyone eats in a chair. Instead, it will obediently lie down and wait. Lastly, the trainer suggests the eldest son take the dog for walks 5 to 6 times a day, which will also help him lose weight. The training ends amidst laughter and joy. In the final video feedback, the family confirms they've been adhering to the trainer's methods and believes the dog will overcome its issues, leading to a happier and more harmonious life for everyone.